What is going on YouTube? Welcome back to another video. Today we are officially going to be installing our Skar subwoofer into the LEXUS. If you don't know who I am, my name is Max Jolly. I post automotive content here on YouTube, working on different cars, doing maintenance, modifications, whatever it may be. If I'm a new face on your screen and you enjoy the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video. It means a lot and it really helps with the growth of the channel. Make sure you go check out some of the other videos on my channel. If you missed the last one, we installed a line output converter in our LEXUS so that way we could run this subwoofer with a factory stereo system. That is a great video. You should go check it out, especially if you're doing something similar. But without further ado, let me show you what I've got in front of me. To install the subwoofer, I got this full Skar audio wiring kit. It was a really good value compared to some of the other options on the market, and I've heard nothing but good reviews with Skar. I've used a couple of their wiring kits before on friends' vehicles and it worked great. Here's everything that it came with. We obviously have our 4-gauge power strap, 4-gauge grounding cable, RCAs, the remote signal wire, a 100 amp fuse, some speaker wire, which we will not be using because I already ran the speaker wire from the sub to the amp. I'll show you that in a second. And then a bunch of hardware, which is super nice. Comes with all of your terminal spade, comes with some shrink wrap, some zip ties, so that's going to be really handy. We're definitely going to be using that later. Here is the little cover if you're trying to get a similar or the same wiring kit. My speaker does 800 watts RMS, so this 1200 watt power rating should be plenty. You always want to oversize when you're doing wiring like this because the last thing you want to do is set your car on fire because you got too constricted of a wire. That's what I got for the install. Let me bring all this down to the car and we will get right into installing this whole kit. Yeah. This is the subwoofer that we're going to be installing today. It is a 10-inch, I believe, Skar subwoofer. Got it from a buddy who was getting rid of it from his old car. As you can see, I already mounted the amplifier to the box. It was just 4 screws with a couple standoffs and ran the speaker wire from the amplifier to the speaker itself. That was super, super easy. Doesn't necessarily have to be the first step. I just already have that done. So this is the sub we're going to be throwing in today. I am very excited. The first thing we're going to do is disconnect our battery so that way we do not fry any of the electronics in the car or ourselves while doing this install. Next thing we got to do is figure out where we want to mount our fuse block. This has to be as close as possible to the battery, about like 6 to 8 inches away along the power cable, and getting that situated before running any of the power cable is the best way to go about doing it. So I'm going to start picking off some of these plastics and seeing where we can mount this thing. I found the perfect grommet through the firewall to run our power cable through. As you can see, there is that colored loom which runs straight into the firewall through that rubber grommet. I'll show you from the inside of the car. If you look right up under the glove box, you can see where that colored loom comes out right there. So that's the grommet we're going to use to run our power cable through the firewall. And now that we know that information, we can figure out where we want to mount this fuse block. So after doing a little bit of thinking and looking around, I believe I'm going to mount the fuse block right about here, somewhere around there. And I think what I'm going to do is just whip up a custom bracket, put 2 bolts through those 2 holes, and then have the custom bracket reach up a little bit and hold the fuse right there. This will be perfect. It's out of the way and get a little warm, and air will be able to travel around it and cool it off. And then the most important part, it's within 18 inches of the battery. The closer you can get to the battery, the better, to prevent any damage in case the fuse does blow. So that's what we're going to do. For now, I'm just going to run the wire lengths so it's approximately right there, and then later I'll come back, hard mount it, have it be all good. Now that we know where our fuse is going to go, we can start running our battery cable to the amplifier. Oh, damn, that has never been removed. Holy shit. before we make any cuts to this wire to install our fuse block, I'm gonna run the entire cable down through the grommet right there. And the reason for doing so is that there isn't much margin for error when cutting this cable. I gotta get it right the first time, so I'd rather double check, make sure everything's routed the right way, how it's supposed to be, and then we'll make our cut to install our fuse block. And I'm sorry for this angle, I'm doing the best I can. This hood strut is in the way, and there's no good place to put the camera, so hopefully you guys can understand what I'm doing here. Got the whole power wire ran down through our grommet right down there. I punctured it with the knife, ran a screwdriver through the interior to the exterior, and then I was able to locate the hole and jam this wire down with the screwdriver. A lot of people do that. Sometimes you use coat hangers, you can tape it on. By any means necessary, get that cable through your grommet, and now I am able to appropriately measure where we're gonna make our cut for our fuse block. So I filmed a few clips of me crimping on the connectors and doing the heat shrink on that cable, but I am not ending up putting them in the video because the crimp connectors I gave were too big and the heat shrink didn't heat shrink. I hit it with a lighter and it just started to burn up, which is not ideal. So I ended up running to the store and grabbing some new crimp connectors. In the future, I will go back and do some soldering or some heat shrink over that. The next clip you're gonna see is just me installing it after crimping it. So sorry I didn't show that, but it's just strip the wire, slide on the right size connector and crimp it down. So now that the power cable is ran from the positive terminal of the battery, this is all crimped and ran properly. It's gonna need a bolt check. I'll tighten those down further because that is important. The next step is just to run the wire back and through to the trunk. So great progress has been made. Battery connections are done. Wire is ran all along through here. Middle was a pain in the ass, and now it is under with the rest of the harness under this step. Next tricky part is kind of getting it into the trunk. Obviously the seats are in the way. What I'm going to do is remove this bottom part of the rear seat. It's extremely easy to do. You kind of just yank up on it and it pops up, and hopefully we'll be able to find a hole to snake it up and towards the subwoofer. So I stopped recording for a minute. It looks like I did a lot of work. I really didn't. I popped off this bottom seat part completely out, pulled off the back of the seat. It was just 5 12mm bolts, and now we are able to see exactly where we want to run our wire. The problem with this car though is that it was the top of the line luxury car for the time. So moving the foam aside, the entire metal sheet of the chassis that goes right here has very few holes in it, and all the holes are usually plugged or covered or sealed in any way just to make the cabin as insulated and soundproof as possible. One thing I found out is that for a lot of these holes, just manufacturing holes and whatnot, they put these little stickers over top to prevent sound deadening, and I found this hole right here remove the sticker, and the 4-gauge wire slips through it perfectly. And from the perspective of the trunk, we can see the wire comes out right there, which is going to be perfect to run to the back of our subwoofer on this side of the car. So if you're doing this to your car, find any hole in the back. Yours shouldn't be as isolated from the outside world as mine is. However, this is going to work great. So I'm going to pull that all the way through, finish tucking this back in, put the seats back, and then we'll move on to the next thing. Now, I'm sure at least 2 of you probably thought, why is this kid running a wire through a metal chassis piece that could easily strip or cut the wire? The Skar kit actually comes with this little plastic grommet. So I had to do a little bit of trimming, a little bit of modifying to get it to fit in there because the hole in the metal was a little bit smaller than the grommet. But now, once I slide this cable through just like that, it's rubbing up against plastic. Not any kind of metal is touching it, so it'll be 100% safe. Do not worry about that, because I was worried for a second, but then I remember that was in the kit. So make sure if you're running it through a small hole like that, or any kind of metal being around the cord, that it can't cut it in any way possible. Put a rubber or plastic grommet or anything of the sort. The rear interior is all back together with the wire now fully routed from the battery all the way into the trunk. I would say that was probably the hardest part of the entire install. For now, we are going to leave this alone, leave it right here. We'll do the rest of the components and come back to it. I just want to get all of the wires to where they need to be, then put the sub into place, worry about connecting them and cutting everything to length and putting the interior back together. The next step in the process is to route our ground wire. Fortunately enough, there is an OEM ground right behind the carpet next to where we're putting the subwoofer. We're going to run our cable to that, which I can't really film again because this carpet's in the way. I don't want to remove it fully. So I'll show you once I get it on there and how I route it to where we need it right here for the amplifier. Just to be extra sure that the ground was going to be strong enough, I took some time with a scraper and a wire wheel and got some of the bare metal off of this area and cleaned up the ground contact here. I think I'm going to put the ground cable directly to that bare metal of the frame and then just put this OEM ground right back over top of it. Just like that, we have a super clean and super strong ground connection. This thing is not going anywhere, and we can now route our cable behind this carpet and it will land right where our amplifier needs to be. We are almost there. Next step that we have to do is run our RCA cables, and I mentioned this before, but if you didn't check out the last video, we installed this little line output converter right here so we could have RCA outputs from our OEM amplifier, which is right here, so we could have our completely stock sound system but still install this subwoofer. So all we got to do, because we made this super easy for ourselves in the last video, plug in 2 of the leads here, run the cable around to the amplifier, plug them into the amplifier. Super easy, this step. So I basically ran the amplifier switch 12 just how you would in any other amplifier, out of the back of the amplifier. And what I bought is this little fuse tap. It's not fully installed yet. I just made this revelation. So I bought this little fuse tap. What it does is just taps into one of your fuse. I found one that was switch 12. I believe it's the rear cigarette lighter. So it taps into that, and then it gives us an actual switch 12 to run to our remote wire. So it's done now. Everything is good. The amplifier turns off, you turn the car off, turns on when you turn the car on. The system is good. The last thing to do is button everything up, get it all in place, fix all of this mess, get all the wires cut to the right length. So let's knock that out real quick, and then that'll be a wrap for the subwoofer install. I will do a little demo at the end of the video showing you what it sounds like and how loud it is, because this thing is actually insane the one time I tested it off camera. The interior is finally back all in place as it should be. Not a single clip broke, not a single bolt missing. I'm extremely proud of myself for that one. And we have our subwoofer wires neatly down, tucked over there. Everything ran properly, buttoned up properly. Remote wire, RCAs, power, and ground. The last step is to just throw in the subwoofer for probably not the last time, off camera, I'll probably go back through and find the inevitable vibrations between body panels and interior panels, and probably do a little bit of tidying up, maybe zip tie some of the wires together so it's neater. Subwoofer is ready to go into the car for the last time, and we can hear how this thing bumps. And there we go, the subwoofer is in, looks amazing. I have to figure out a proper way to route these RCAs because it's kind of just going up over the carpet and down into the line output converter over there. I'll figure something out. And then these 3 wires, they're all pretty much going to the same spot right there. I'll just probably zip tie them together to make them all 3 nice and one. And then the third thing I have to do, probably off camera button up, is make sure this thing doesn't move. I've had it in my car for a while, just uninstalled because I didn't really have any other good place to put it, and it hasn't moved under any kind of accelerations or relatively just normal driving. It hasn't moved even an inch. So maybe the vibrations of it being a subwoofer will make it move. So I'll figure that out when we get there, but I might end up doing some kind of strap over the top, or I don't know. Maybe there's some OEM bolt holes I can strap it down to, but yeah, man, that looks amazing. Let me power it on, make sure everything turns on and works properly, and that'll be pretty much a wrap for the install. So since the last clip, I cannot make this shit up. We've blown the subwoofer. So unfortunately, the subwoofer was wired the wrong way. The buddy I bought it from, we installed the subwoofer actually in his car when we were maybe sophomores in high school. It was our first subwoofer install. We both really didn't know what we were doing. And I think we actually wired this thing wrong. This is meant to be a 600 watt RMS speaker, and we had it wired basically so the amplifier was putting out 800 watts RMS to this thing. And I don't even know how it lasted this long. So unfortunately, the speaker is blown. Everything is fine except for the coil driver. I ordered a new one, so in the next video we're actually going to try and rebuild this sucker and get it back up and running. So I am so sorry that I'm unable to show you guys a demo of the setup, but since I installed it and did a little bit of testing and messing around with it, it started to pop. So it sucks is what it is. You can probably actually hear it if I... The coil is just completely burnt up and completely torn itself apart. So we're gonna try to replace the coil on this thing. If it doesn't end up working, I'll just buy another sub and we'll replace it. It'll be just fine. Sorry, sorry that I'm not gonna be able to give you a demo, but that was the install. The install went great for the few days that I did have it in the car. It sounded amazing, so I'm just even more excited to tear this thing apart. Do something I've never done before. I've actually never rebuilt a speaker. And it doesn't seem too hard based on what I've seen on the internet, so I'm excited to try something new. This should be really, really fun. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching the install of the subwoofer. Hopefully this part comes in soon and the video can come out soon. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I appreciate you staying to the end. If you're here, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.